guys remember the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia? I mean, that kind of just went away. It was a big story, blew up all over the place. Many Democrats were talking about how he was one of the first cases of his rights being taken away as they just took him off the streets and deported him to that prison in El Salvador where murderous things happen. What they're definitely upset about is that they finally had to bring him back and then charge him with these other charges. The problem with those charges that our federal government, the Department of Justice, is charging Kilmar Abrego Garcia with is that they don't even want that trial. Doesn't make a lot of sense.
Lawyers for Kilmar Abrego Garcia are fighting to keep him in federal custody amid concerns the U.S. could deport him again. Abrego Garcia was mistakenly sent to El Salvador in March, but was brought back to the U.S. earlier this month to face federal charges of human smuggling. Now, the case is ongoing, but his lawyers say they don't know what the government plans to do with their client. They wrote in a court filing, quote, "The government apparently has little interest in actually bringing this case to trial. Instead, it's chosen to bring Mr. Abrego back only to convict him in the court of public opinion."
Isn't that weird? So CBS News was reporting that the folks that have brought these charges against Kilmar Abrego Garcia, because the Supreme Court said you have to bring him back. By the way, a guy that this administration and these folks in charge said they mistakenly deported, and then once he was mistakenly deported, they want to just leave him there anyway. So if your brother, father, son was mistakenly deported to a murderous prison in El Salvador, where he literally said, "Do with them whatever you want," I think it means something to want to bring him back when they admitted that they mistakenly sent him away because they don't care. That's the whole purpose. How many other people were mistakenly sent away? Talk to some of these Republicans and conservatives and MAGA folks that say, man, these Democrats are really obsessed with this one guy who had domestic violence charges against his girlfriend or wife. He's an example of what it is they've done to probably many more people and other folks' rights that they've taken away. Their right to a trial, their right to even being these charges being something that gets even brought up. Because afterwards they send people away, and Tom Homan goes on Fox News and says, "Blah, blah, 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 you know what? Well, we brought up all these people, and then we just have these backdoor ways of finding out what happened." That's what Tom Homan talks about, instead of actually bringing forward charges because they're bypassing the judicial process because they're criminals. There's a little bit more on this. Here's the details of why it is that they're trying to avoid having this trial. Again, this whole case is Kilmar Abrego Garcia's attorneys want to keep him in jail because they're trying to make sure that the government don't get their hands on him to do more egregious things. Isn't that crazy?
What has the Trump administration said about the possibility of deporting Abrego Garcia?
Kelly, there's a really interesting new twist in this case. As you know, Kilmar Abrego Garcia was mistakenly deported to El Salvador and only brought back to face federal charges related to what the Justice Department alleges was a scheme by him and other individuals to smuggle undocumented immigrants into the U.S. and to transfer them from the Texas border to Maryland, where he lived with his U.S. citizen child and wife. But now the government was supposed to release him from federal criminal custody,
Right,
so ICE could pick him up and detain him pending deportation proceedings. His lawyers today, however, asked the federal judge overseeing the criminal case to delay that release from federal criminal custody because they are concerned that Mr. Abrego Garcia could be, yes, detained, but also deported to a third country. And that is really important because while the government has no legal authority to deport him to El Salvador because of that 2019 order that blocked that deportation, it does have the authority to deport him to any other country in the world. And the Justice Department prosecutors in this case indicated as much, that they will try to deport him to a third-party country if he is indeed taken into immigration custody. The lawyers have asked for his release to be delayed through July 16. We're waiting on a ruling from the judge in Nashville to see if they actually grant that.
The attorneys for the guy who's been charged want him to stay in jail while they're waiting for trial because the government wants to get their hands on him and send him to a third country because they can't send him to El Salvador. The reason they can then send him to that third country is because the Supreme Court ruled that this Trump administration can send people to third countries, countries they've never been, countries that they're not from, just because they need to expedite their process of shedding as many people that they don't like from this country as possible based on their racial biases. They don't want the trial. Remember all those charges that Pam Bondi was talking about? Remember Pam Bondi was like, yo, I mean, there's going to be human trafficking charges. There's going to be assault charges. There's going to be drug smuggling charges. There's going to be pencil breaking charges. It's constant. All the charges that they said that they'd have from him. And we're like, good. Actually, if he committed all those crimes, go through the legal process, convict him, and send his ass. but they don't even want to do that. Isn't that suspicious? Isn't it suspicious that the people who said they have all these open and shut cases don't want to open nor shut those cases? What they want to do, they waited on the Supreme Court to give him an extra level of authoritative power to send anybody out that he wants. Part of the filing that Abrego Garcia's attorneys put forward was some of the conditions that he endured while he was in CICOT down in El Salvador. I want to show you that was mentioned in this. We're going to start right here at the 115 point. In May of 2023, a leading human rights organization in El Salvador released a comprehensive report detailing severe human rights abuses within the country's prison system, especially in CICOT, where they sent Kilmar Abrego Garcia. The investigation documented the deaths of 153 inmates between March of 2022 and March of 2023, attributing many to torture, beatings, mechanical asphyxiation, in other words, strangulation, and lack of medical attention. Autopsies revealed common patterns of lacerations, hematomas, sharp object wounds, and signs of choking or strangulation. Survivors, the ones who made it out, at least not out of the prison, just out of death, reported being forced to pick food off the floor with their mouths, subjected to electric shocks, and exposed untreated skin fungus epidemics. Isn't that crazy? A little bit more. Here's the blue part. This is what they highlighted in this particular posting. Abrego Garcia reports that he was subjected to severe mistreatment upon arrival at that prison, including, but not limited to, severe beating, severe sleep deprivation, inadequate nutrition, and psychological torture. That's the first part. This is what he's alleging. His attorneys are alleging that went on during that prison. And the reason I read that first part before I got to Abrego Garcia's accusations about how he was mistreated and tortured in that prison is because it's not just him. Again, this human rights organization in the country pointed out these 153 other inmates went through similar tortures, beatings, and deaths. Just want to point that out. Not just 153 went through it, 153 died. There's more. There's more. Upon arrival at CICOT, detainees were greeted by a prison official who stated, "Welcome to CICOT. Whoever enters here doesn't leave." Abrego Garcia was then forced to strip, issue some prison clothing, that's standard, and subject to physical abuse, including being kicked in the legs with boots and struck on his head and arms to make him change clothes faster. His head was shaved. We saw all that happen, and he was frog marched into cell 15, hidden by wooden batons all along the way. Here's that next part. Abrego Garcia and 20 other Salvadorians were forced to kneel from approximately 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. overnight, with guards striking anyone who fell from exhaustion. And also during that time, Abrego Garcia was denied bathroom access and he soiled himself. So how many other folks were denied bathroom access, denied any medical attention? And in fact, why would you give someone medical attention when you're imposing the pain and grief and torture on them? Strangulation, death, sharp object wounds. This is a torture prison. That's the whole purpose. In fact, they kind of told him that. They straight up mentioned how, we're going to put you in these prisons with these other folks, and there's going to be all kinds of fights and disruptions and murder going on. And they're going to turn away and let it happen because that's the purpose. The whole purpose of this is to try and tell people we're a brutal dictatorship and we will punish, harm you, and murder you if you're the wrong kind of person. After approximately 1 week at CICOT, prison director and other officials separated 21 Salvadorans who had arrived together. 12 individuals with visible gang-related tattoos were moved to another cell, while Abrego Garcia remained with 8 others who, like him, upon information and belief, had no gang affiliations or tattoos. They separated him and 8 others from the folk that they knew were actual gang members. Again, that original complaint from the original accusation from our Department of Justice about him being a gang member, as he's there in the country where they know where these gang members and what the identifiable features are, they separated him from them. As reflected by segregation, the Salvadoran authorities recognized that plaintiff Abrego Garcia was not affiliated with any gang, and that around this time, prison officials explicitly acknowledged that his tattoos were not gang-related, telling him, your tattoos are fine. Those same tattoos that Donald Trump pulled that picture up and wrote in Times New Roman font MS13 on his knuckles, because apparently he's that stupid and he knows that the rest of the country is too. Listen, man, we're sitting there looking at it go down in real time. I only have a couple minutes left. I want to read one more aspect of this devastating situation that they did to this guy. While at CICOT, prison officials repeatedly told Abrego Garcia that they would transfer him to the cells containing gang members, who they assured him would, quote, quote, tear him apart. Why would you threaten a gang member, according to the United States Department of Justice, to cells where there's gang members where they would tear him apart? I thought he's a gang member. They even said we'll use the threat of sending someone who's not a gang member into prison, into cells with other gang members that they hope would tear him apart. I mean, that's their assumption. Indeed, plaintiff Abrego Garcia repeatedly observed prisoners in nearby cells who he understood to be gang members violently harm each other with no intervention from guards or personnel. Screams from nearby cells would similarly ring out throughout the night without any response from prison guards or on personnel. I saw someone here point out they're wondering about that gay hairstylist. I believe he was a stylist that was also swept up and sent off to this prison. He was another guy. So if everybody thinks everyone's just obsessed with Kilmar Abrego Garcia, what it is he's a highlighting point of the way that this administration is doing things. And I'm gonna show you what Kristi Noem said about the way that they do things when she was asked about that specific hairstylist that was also sent off to this prison and hasn't been heard from since, at least from what I've seen. If someone else has heard from the developments around this guy's story, please tell me. Because right now, or at least as of what, this was probably a month or two ago, they don't give a damn. Watch.
Graph here of André Hernandez Romero, a gay makeup artist from Venezuela. He fled Venezuela fearing gang violence because of his opposition to the Maduro dictatorship and his sexual orientation. He presented himself at a port of entry and requested asylum. His claim was found to be credible, and he was placed in detention to await a full hearing. But he never received a full hearing because you put him on one of those planes to El Salvador, where he still is today. Listen to me. He had no criminal record in the United States or in any other country. He did not even enter the country illegally. He presented at a port of entry. He tried to do it the legal way. And to this date, the only evidence your department has presented to justify his imprisonment is that he had two tattoos, one that said mom and one that said dad. Do you have any other evidence to present for why this individual should be locked up in El Salvador?
Sir, every case is used
the
same protocols and the same processes and inputs.
Do you have any
that
evidence other than the
law enforcement
tattoos that say
officers
mom
use in
or dad
criminal
for why
cases?
this
So
individual
it's not
should be
just
locked
on
up?
tattoos. It's who they're affiliated with, their communication.
You have not
who they're
presented
spending
any
time
other
with,
evidence,
criminal
nor has your
activities.
department.
They have no evidence. They don't care to have evidence. It's an authoritarian regime that occupies the White House. That hairstylist is probably no longer with us. I'm just assuming. I can't say so. I hope that he is. But either way, no one's really talking about him. And who knows how many others that are in this similar situation, sent off to this prison, and in the hopes of this president, other prisons in other third countries that people have never been to, and finding new ways to take away people's citizenship that have been here, that have come in the legal route. Kristi Noem was just in Alligator Alcatraz talking about how people, if they come into the immigration system correctly, will process it and will do it the right way. But if we catch you on the streets, we're going to send you away. That guy did it the right way. And as he was going through that process of doing it the right way, and he had a legitimate case for asylum, they sent him away. And they hope that he's dead. They hope that he was tortured and murdered.